Boom, the third episode of Doctor Who's 14th series, or Season 1, depending on how you want to look at it, first debuted to us yesterday, well, at least on live TV, on the 18th of May 2024. And it's written by Stephen Moffat. Now, when I heard that Stephen Moffat was going to be coming back to write an episode of the new Doctor Who now, I wasn't entirely sure how I felt about it, because I kind of thought after he became showrunner, and then when he decided to leave Doctor Who back in 2017, that was going to be it for Stephen Moffat, that he wasn't coming back to Doctor Who, that he would move on to other projects and other TV shows and films, and ultimately Doctor Who would just be a part of his history. So, I don't know, I just kind of assumed that's the way things would be. I mean, I know Russell T Davies came back as showrunner now for Doctor Who, but I kind of just assumed that he was the exception that proved the rule, that once you had become showrunner, then you probably wouldn't come back. However, I'm glad that Stephen Moffat is back, and I'm also glad that he's come back under Russell T Davies, because while Stephen Moffat definitely had some really great episodes while he was showrunner, the ones that he had before he became showrunner, I don't know, I kind of thought they were a little bit special. The ones like The Empty Child, The Doctor Dances, The Girl in the Fireplace, Blink, Silence in the Library, and Forest of the Dead, I always kind of regard those episodes as really kind of special. Now, because if you saw that they were written by Stephen Moffat, you'd either guarantee at the time they were either going to be scary, kind of emotionally thought-provoking, or a mixture of the two. Like, The Empty Child and The Doctor Dances and Blink, I both thought were some of the scariest episodes that Doctor Who has had in recent years. The Girl in the Fireplace, I know, is a personal favourite for a lot of people, and Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead helped set up his eventual ascension to become showrunner. But there was also a small thought at the back of my mind. Now, personally, I don't think that Chris Chibnall, when he was showrunner, I personally don't think he did that badly. He tried some stuff, some of it worked, some of it didn't, but Doctor Who has to change every now and again in order to stay relevant. But I do know that he got quite a lot of criticism online, and there are people who weren't so keen on the Chibnall era. I personally didn't mind it that much. I thought it was fun. But when heard that Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat are coming back as kind of writers, there is kind of a small part in the back of my mind that does acknowledge a viewpoint people are going to have, that they're coming back to fix what Chris Chibnall did. I don't think it needed fixing. Well, it wasn't broken as far as I know, but let's get on to the actual episode itself, because I honestly think this is the best episode of Series 14 so far. The Doctor, played once again by Ncuti Gatwa, and his companion Ruby Sunday, played by Millie Gibson, end up landing on the planet of Kastarian 3. And while there, they find a group of soldiers. However, while the Doctor is kind of exploring Kastarian 3 around the trenches, he ends up stepping on a landmine. And he isn't immediately blown to pieces, but it's expected that he will be blown to pieces if the sensors end up going the entire way. So he and Ruby have to find some way to deactivate the landmine. In doing so, they end up meeting a couple of soldiers, including a deceased soldier named John Francis Vater, played by Joe Anderson, who appears to them in the form of a hologram, his daughter, Splice Alison Vater, played by Cowlin Springall, another soldier named Canterbury James Oliphant, played by Bhav Joshi, who everyone shortens to Canto, and they also discover ambulances played with kind of holographic interfaces played by Susan Twist. Now, I personally wasn't aware that Susan Twist had been playing several roles so far, and that she's got a recurring role within Series 14, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens with her. In fact, previously I've kind of given kind of subtitles for each of the series kind of based on an underlying storyline. Stuff like Bad Wolf, Torchwood, Vote Saxon, Missing Planet, you get the idea. I think my one so far for this series would be a twist at the end, given the song in the previous episode and also the fact we got Susan Twist in here. There's also another soldier who we see in the cold open named Carson, played by Oh boy, I know I'm going to butcher this name. Medizade Valujerde. I apologise if I mispronounced that. The same with Cowland Springle. I apologise if I mispronounced your name. But the big surprise in this episode by the casting of who shows up is a soldier named Mandy Flynn, a female soldier who is shown to be somewhat in love or have... she likes Kanto, but then she also is shown to look after Splice. And she is played, surprisingly, by Verada Sethu. Now, if you've watched several of my videos in the past, you'll know that Verada Sethu is set up to be a new companion, set to debut next year. Apparently she's going to be called Belinda, or at least that's what I've heard. Don't quote me on that. But part of me does wonder at first whether they want to set her up to be like Freema Agyeman, Karen Gillan, Bradley Walsh, or Jenna Coleman, in the actors who had roles in Doctor Who episodes before they ultimately joined as companions. The other part of me thinks that I know that they're already filming, or they already have been filming, Shooty Gatwa's second series as the Doctor, and part of me thinks, well, when they were planning it, they were like, you know what, we like Verada Sethu in that one episode, Boom. Do you think we should bring her back? Yeah, why not? Anyway, these soldiers are part of the Anglican Marines, which I briefly wondered whether they were similar to the clerics that the Doctor and Amy encountered in the 2010 episode, The Time of Angels. Soldiers who were also part of the church. However, I found out recently after doing a bit more research that the Anglican Marines have been part of Stephen Moffat's episode for a while. They were indeed the ones who the Doctor and Amy encountered in The Time of Angels, and they were also in A Good Man Goes to War. So, the Anglican Marines, they've been around for a while. So, yeah. And in trying to find a way to get the Doctor off the landmine, they managed to do some good stuff, and some good dialogue between the characters. Like, the Doctor ultimately tells him that he's not human and what he's been through. If this bomb were to go off and use him as the bomb, then ultimately he could end up destroying an entire nebula, an entire galaxy, to which Mandy Flynn looks at him like, prove it. And even after scanning him, she's like, yeah, we probably should figure out a way to get him off that thing. The one character who I'll admit I'm not so sure about, in terms of how well she was portrayed, was Splice. Now, no offence to Cowland Springle, I'm sure she was doing the best she could, but this was a child that I personally felt wasn't very well adapted. I mean, one, she'd been brought to the middle of a war zone, and she's asking a lot of the time, well, where's my daddy? And everyone's just like trying to skate around the fact that her father has been killed. But what the Doctor and co ultimately end up finding out is that they're fighting capitalism, which I do actually like for a concept. It turns out that the weapons that the Anglican Marines have been using, as well as the ambulances, if a soldier is injured, then the ambulance is supposed to tend to them and fix them up. However, the ambulances have seemingly been run by a kind of AI that, well, at the start of the episode, John Francis Vader is returning to base. He ends up getting injured and partially blinded, and when the ambulance scans him, it said, you would be cured from your blindness in 4 weeks. This is an unacceptable time frame. You are to be killed. To which, ultimately, as I said, they're fighting capitalism, and I honestly think that's an interesting concept to grasp. It reminds me a lot of the 2017 episode Oxygen, where the machines believe that it's more economical for the company for the suits to just take away the oxygen that the humans are using, until the Doctor points out to them that their deaths will be expensive and will end up using more oxygen and more time that the company ultimately wants to save. So I do actually think that this episode has some good points to it. As I said, I'm not entirely sure Splice is terribly acclimatized, or she's not the best character, but I think she did well enough. The one thing that did bug me about her character is towards the end of the episode, when the Doctor says to Splice, I'm so sorry about your dad. She said, why are you sorry? My daddy might be dead, but he's never gone. I'm just like, yeah, you could view that as the child being strong, but you could also view that as this child is going to need therapy before too long. It does also feature an iconic shot that I think we've been waiting for a while, that I think they showed back with the 60th anniversary with shooting Atwa's face towards the end, and we all wondered, where is this shot? Finally shows up here, and the background, he makes it, and it's a really good moment. And also, towards the end of the episode, Ncuti Gatwa does call back to an iconic 11th Doctor bit, an iconic Matt Smith bit, as he turns around to leave and tells Mundy and Splice, you know what, you're great. You know what, fish fingers and custard, my absolute lifelong favourite. To which, any reference back to fish fingers and custard, you know what, I'll take that. Right, this is the second time I've had to film this review, as I think the first time I uploaded it, the sound was a bit dodgy, but I've hopefully set up the microphone okay. Hopefully this time it should be better, and if it's not, well, you're just going to have to deal with quite quiet audio here. But that's my quick little review of the episode Boom, and to be honest, I think so far this has to shoot to the top for me for the best episode of Series 14. Anyway, next week is 73 Yards, where apparently the Doctor and Ruby arrive in Wales and have to deal with Welsh folklore. What'll happen there? I'll have to wait and see. Anyway, until next time, adios.